alumna, Sofia Matveyeva. Sofia is the founder of Enti, a retail tech platform that connects consumers, stylists, and brands. The company won App of the Day by Mashable, and Grazia named Enti one of the world's best fashion tech startups. Matveyeva has contributed to the Financial Times and The Guardian on entrepreneurship, and she has a regular column in Forbes. She has also acted as advisor at Chicago Booth's New Venture Challenge and the Microsoft X London Challenge, a fashion incubator. Matveyeva also advises brands and retailers on marketing, technology strategy, and consumer behavior. She holds an MBA from Chicago Booth and a BSc in politics from the University of Bristol. You can visit her website at sofiamatveyeva.com. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to cede the floor to Sofia.
Hi, everybody. So first of all, Adam, well done for saying my name correctly. You've been practicing. Welcome, everybody, to this webinar on how to create and grow your personal brand. So as Adam was saying, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm not a PR person. So I'm going to be talking to you about how I built my personal brand and how I've used it. I did start my career in PR, so I do actually apply some of those skills, but I'm applying them to myself and now apply them to my company as opposed to applying them to clients. So let's get started. So as Adam was saying, I founded Enti when I was at Chicago Booth. I actually went through the New Venture Challenge. The company is now growing. It's growing around the world, mainly in the US and the UK. We've got a B2C platform and a B2B platform, and we also have investors. And the reason why I'm telling you that is because we need to have a profile with consumers, we need to have a profile with business people, and we need to have a profile with investors. So those are all different kinds of audiences. And who you want to be known by is something that you need to think about in terms of what you want to achieve. Another thing I've now started doing recently is I've started teaching courses on technology for non-technical founders. I'm a non-technical founder, and I've built a platform that's run on technology. I think unless you are creating something really, really new and really revolutionary, unless you're putting robots on Mars, you don't actually need to go and study computer science. You just need to understand the concept of what technology is in order to work with technical teams. There is a reason why I'm giving you this preamble before we start talking about personal branding. And I, as Adam was saying, I write for various publications about entrepreneurship and technology and marketing. So that kind of personal branding has been super, super useful to me because honestly, when I was starting the company, when I was just in a Chicago Booth classroom, I did not know anything, and also I didn't know the fact that I didn't know. And also I had a PR background. So I came from a PR and media background. I worked a bit in private equity. Then I went to Chicago Booth and I decided to start a tech company. And I thought I'm going to go and start this thing, recruit a great team, and get investors. How did I manage to do that? Even though actually, if you kind of look at it, there's no reason why somebody like me with that background should have been doing that. I actually think that for me, my personal brand was the thing that actually helped me get that. I had been doing guest posts and doing a lot of volunteering and building my network for quite a long time. So by the time I actually started working on something where I needed investors, where I needed a team, essentially where I needed people to trust me, I already had something to fall back on. I think in the world of work that we're living in now, we have to invest in our personal brands. So first of all, a lot of us would have portfolio careers. It's very rare that, it's increasingly rare rather. It's increasingly rare that somebody will just have one job. Often somebody would have a job and then they would maybe do some lecturing on the side or consulting or something else. You have a lot of freelancers, you have a lot of consultants, but also even if you are not doing that yet, I'd strongly recommend that you think about it because there's no such thing as a safe job. I think a lot of us will remember our friends at Lehman and remember the financial crisis. So we are no longer in a position where we can just hold on to somebody else's brand. So maybe our personal brand is not going to be as strong as a big brand like Goldman Sachs, but you can still have a pretty good personal brand to make sure that if things go really wrong, you can stand out from the competition. So the good news is that actually building a personal brand, if you decide to do it, has some easy aspects. So the easy aspect is that more people consume content than produce it. So actually, the figure on most social media, for example, is that more people are looking at content rather than creating it. And obviously, creating intelligent content versus a Facebook post, those are different things. But still, if you're the person who's creating thought leadership content and it's decent, I'm not even talking about brilliant, it's decent, your content in your name is going to be read and is going to be shared. So if you start creating something and it is okay, you are amplifying your voice. So few people ever try to become recognized thought leaders. So that means that if you're getting into that race and you do it smartly, it is possible for you to achieve your aim. So that's the good news. Obviously, we have the bad news. You still have to do the day job. And at the same time, if you're going down this road and you decide to invest time in your personal brand, which I think you should, clearly, you need to devote your time, your energy, and frankly, your money into it. So you have to find the time and the energy to essentially to do this. To be a recognized thought leader, you need various aspects. So let's just take that apart. So you need to be recognized, and we'll talk about how to get yourself recognized. That's work. But you need to be a thought leader. So that means you actually need to produce something interesting. You need to give something of value, and you really get that through your day job. So be careful of just focusing too much on kind of the promotion bit if you are not giving people something useful, something that they can actually use. As Adam was saying, I've had quite a lot of media coverage myself and for my company, and I've contributed to various different things. And I've been a speaker at conferences, and that's been great. You know, some of it is nice, some of it is fun, some of it is just, you know, plain old flattering. But I have not yet had an invitation from Richard Branson to Necker Island, which I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for it. But you know, even when I wrote an article in the Financial Times, some people wrote things to me, and that did lead to some introductions. But I would say that having a strong personal brand is something that opens the door to places that are otherwise either exclusive or hard to get to, or maybe you can skip a few promotions if you have a strong personal brand. But it doesn't actually just get you money, or it doesn't just get you deals. It opens the door, but then you still have to do the work too once you walk through it. The reason why I'm telling you this is that the best way to manage your personal brand is if it's very, very linked to what you actually want to achieve in your career. Because if what you want to achieve in your career is what you're talking about anyway and what you're known for, then it's going to be so much more easy for you to work out what you want when you do get a meeting with that super senior person, or when, you know, a politician or a journalist or somebody that you've really been dying to be, when they ask for your opinion. You're going to be much more ready than if you're just, you know, if you're essentially living a double life. So, had to sneak a picture of Kim K into this. I mean, she is beautiful, but she's not a thought leader. She's many things, but she's not a thought leader. So the reason why she's here is that I just really want to emphasize that being a celebrity is not the same as being a thought leader. So this is a UChicago alumni session, so I'm sure you're not expecting me to talk to you about getting Instagram likes, but I just want to emphasize that being known and having a personal brand to aid your career, those are different things. Thought leadership is about promoting you. So Kim K, brilliant at self-promotion. You know, this is a self-promotion selfie class, she should be doing it. But when we're talking about thought leadership and your personal brand in terms of you as a professional, we're talking about promoting your ideas. Now, this is actually really, really important because I find that when I've spoken to people about their personal brand and promoting their personal brand, some people get very shy and they think, I don't want to do self promotion. I don't want to be like all of those people who are just fighting to be heard. It's so vulgar. That's not me. But I actually think that if you have knowledge and you have skills that can help other people, you are doing a disservice to the world by sitting there and keeping them to yourself. So put your humility and shyness away and think about all those people that you could be helping by having your voice out there. This is one of my favorite quotes by one of my favorite authors on the subject. True thought leadership is a gift. Just remember that. Um, don't have your ideas. You've got to take risks because your ideas are going to be shut down. But when your ideas are shut down, you still have to persevere because you have to believe that you're genuinely helping others. So, for example, when I do my classes on technology for non-technical founders, and I basically say to them, guys, you don't need to learn a computer science, you don't need to get a computer science degree, you don't need to learn Python or anything like that. What you need to do is you need to understand how the processes work and how to be a good team leader and a good manager. That does not make me popular in certain circles, especially the tech bro kind of people. That really doesn't make me popular amongst them because they have studied computer science and they would like the field to be kept to them. And of course, it's not nice when people tell you that what you're doing is wrong. However, I still persevere because the pleasure and the joy that I get from people who take what I've shared with them and then they implement that in their lives, and then they actually use that to build businesses, or even if they're not using it to build businesses, if they're just using it to feel more confident when they're in a meeting, that is joy. So when you are thinking about your personal brand in the context of your career, don't let fear of looking like a vulgar self promoter hold you back. Because if you think that you have knowledge, skills, and advice that can help people, it is your duty to go and help people. It is your duty to go and find the time, to find the energy, to get the skills, and get your message out there. So, speaking of Dory Clark, this is an excellent book on personal branding. As you can see, I've got notes on it everywhere. Dory's written, I think, 3 or 4 books, but this is her best book on personal branding. So I highly recommend that you get it. Now, moving on. Adam, can you tell us who is on our webinar today? Can you run polls 1 and 2, please?
Absolutely. Yeah, so our first question for attendees, what is your UChicago degree affiliation? And we're somewhat limited here on our responses. So if you happen to be from Booth or the law school, the college, or UChicago Medicine, please let us know. If it's other or you're not affiliated with UChicago, please choose that 5th option. So I'll give folks just a few seconds and then we'll share out the results.
Sure.
All right, so it looks like we have a very strong Booth contingent with us, 45% of our attendees representing Booth, 26% from the college, 1% from the law school, so hello law school representative, and 28% other. So that's our first poll.
Cool. Well, guys, I'm a repeat offender. I did Chicago Booth and college, so I wonder if any of my friends from either one are there. Anyway, send me a quick message if you know me from either one of those.
All right, and our second poll question asking, are you an entrepreneur, a freelancer or consultant, an employee at an organization, or not working? So if you can choose the option that best describes you, we'll give folks again just a few seconds to share out those responses, and then I will share it out. All right, so it looks like here we have 61% of our attendees who are employees, 16% who are freelancers or consultants, 10% who are entrepreneurs, and 14% who are not working currently.
Cool, awesome, thank you. It's really good to get to know you guys. So I think let's get to this. I think that it doesn't really matter what you are doing in your career, because first of all, it's not static. You might not be an entrepreneur and an employee or a consultant forever or even in the next 3 months. Secondly, having a strong personal brand, as I said, it opens doors and it basically makes you stand out from the competition. If you have a strong personal brand, you are more likely to get a meeting with somebody comfortable. Then what you say, whether you get the deal, you get the promotion, that's kind of up to you, and it's also up to luck. But if you have a personal brand, in my view and from what I've seen, you are more likely to get first dibs on the good stuff, whatever that good stuff is. So the 4 pillars of actually how we go about and we go and build this thing are: you need to develop your niche. We'll talk about all of them in detail. So develop your niche, then create content, get some social proof, and grow your network. So let's start with 1. Develop your expert niche. So the reason why I'm saying that you need to go niche is that there are already lots and lots of generalists. And if you're competing with generalists, then if you're writing about technology in general, you're competing with TechCrunch. That's not really going to work out for you, and yet unless you're already Peter Thiel, in which case you don't need this webinar. So pick a niche that you know, and start creating content about it. Now, you are not going to know what works best and what interests people when you're just sitting there and you're deliberating. The best thing basically you can start doing is you could just start creating content and just see what happens. So I found that when I first started writing, some things would come really easily to me. So, an article would almost write itself. And other times I would have to really sit there and force myself to do it. So you only understand what comes easier to you and what your interests are when you're actually doing it. Also, so that's you. The other side is you don't know what people are going to be interested in until you give them the chance to see it. And I'm still discovering that. So, for example, in my regular Forbes column, sometimes I'll write an article and I'll think, yeah, this is going to be really popular. This is a really interesting topic. And hardly anybody reads it. And then I'll write an article that I think is really not that good. That I would think is kind of okay, but nothing to write home about. And then I see people are retweeting it, and I'm getting inbound requests about it. So the only way you understand what your niche is, both in terms of what interests you and in terms of what interests other people, is you have to start creating something. And inevitably, you'll create some stuff that nobody's going to see or nobody's going to be interested in. Don't worry, it's just part of the journey. It's one piece of content. Nobody's going to die. Don't worry about it. Just get on with it. So also, don't let perfectionism hold you back, because you need to be seen as an expert in your field to win a particular competition. But most of the time, what you're competing for is relatively local. So it might be local in terms of geography, or maybe it's local in terms of, there are specific kind of, maybe it's you and 5 other companies that are competing for a particular contract for a particular client, or you versus a few other people competing for a promotion. So you just need to be better than those people. You don't need to be the best person in the world. So if you kind of think of it like that, I think it's actually much easier to get started. So just know more or appear to know more than the people that you're competing with. Also remember that if you start getting a niche on one thing, you can start developing it for other things too. There's something called the halo effect, which basically means that if you are known as generally being successful and smart in one thing, people are going to think that you're just generally successful and smart. So, if you're a good chef, then it's going to be easier for you to become a good writer, even though it actually doesn't, or rather, it's going to be easier for you to become known as a writer, even if your writing and your cooking are actually completely different skills. So start on one niche, and if you're kind of a Renaissance person, you've got lots and lots of different interests. It doesn't mean that this is going to be your niche forever, and that means that you're picking one instead of others. No, just go with something, see what works, and you can always add on later. So these are some of the ideas to test your expert niche. If you don't know where to get started, start really easy. So think about your field. Where do you work? Like what's your expertise? And literally just do a review. What are the top books about your field? Look, I did this, and like people are reading it. Thousands of people are reading it. Essential technology books for non-technical founders. I literally did a review of, I think it was 4 or 5 books that I read. Each review was maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs, so not complicated, something that anybody can do, and that sets me up as an expert in your field. Again, another question for you to think about in terms of identifying what your expertise is. How can you explain your industry or your job to an outsider? So what is it you do? Can you explain what you're doing to other people succinctly? Can you explain, is there a framework that you can create? Can you explain jargon? When you're explaining what you're doing to people, say at parties, what are the 3 or 4 points you usually make? So, lots of people are interested in finding out about jobs and careers on a very kind of surface level. So what kind of surface level introductory concepts can you give to people out of your job to begin establishing an expert niche? So Adam, let's run our next polls to see, to learn a little bit more about who is online with us today.
Great. So our next poll question is, do you have a blog? Simple yes or no here. So I'll give folks a few more seconds to register their responses, and we'll share out the results for this one.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so overwhelming majority here, 90% do not have a blog, 10% do.
That's okay. Let's move on. Do something else. What's the next one?
So our next poll question is, have you published articles on one of 2 platforms here, LinkedIn or Medium? If you've published on both platforms, maybe choose which one you've used most recently or most often.
And here with LinkedIn, I mean, not just updates, but the actual article format, because publishing updates, it's lower barrier to entry.
Great. So I'll give folks a few more seconds here to respond, and we'll share out this, and we have one more poll. All right, so here we have 87% that have published on LinkedIn and just 13% on Medium. We had fewer responses to this poll question, but looks like more familiarity and more experience on LinkedIn.
Cool.
And lastly, we have you had media coverage? And again, yes or no here. We've got some responses coming in, just a few more seconds to respond.
I feel like we're at a Sotheby's auction. Going once, going twice.
All right, so we have 75% that have not had media coverage and 25% that have.
Okay, cool. Let's continue. Thank you, everybody. I'm finding this very interesting. So let's talk about creating content. So to have a personal brand, there's absolutely no escape from creating content. You just have to do it. And it's not easy and it takes time. But if you want to have a personal brand, if you want to get into the covetable meetings, if you want to have this tool that's essentially going to help you get promoted, help you get the clients, and help you get bigger bonuses, then you gotta create content. You figure out what kind of content you are more likely to create. So some people make long form videos. Great. I mean, that's not for me. If somebody was to produce it for me, fantastic, I would turn up, but I'm not going. That's not my personality type. Some people are really good at making slides and putting them up on SlideShare. Maybe that's you. Some people are really good at writing articles. So I prefer writing articles or doing live presentations in general. So figure out what you like to do. Podcasts, that's another rising trend right now. So you don't have to stick to just one format, but once you figure out what format you like, then go with that. So if you haven't done anything yet, I would recommend just start trying all of them. All of them are going to feel hard at the beginning, but see which one you enjoy most and then go with that. Also, at the beginning, when you're creating content, don't be disappointed if not many people read it. That's okay. That is the case with pretty much everybody. Unless you're already super famous, then your first podcast, your first blog, it's not really going to be read by many, many people. So think about it as professional development and think about it as adding to your personal brand in other ways than views and shares. So, for example, one of the things that I do, and I've been doing for ages, is I would interview people that I want to meet. Now I do it for Forbes, which is an easier sell. But even when I was just writing on Medium, I would reach out to people who are experts in something. And I would say, I'm writing an article on whatever they happen to be an expert in. And could I meet them to interview them and to get their comments? And it's quite surprising how many people are going to say yes. It's quite interesting how many really senior, extremely successful people would say yes to being on somebody's Medium blog or LinkedIn article or on somebody's podcast. Yeah, you're not going to get everybody, but give it a go. You'll be surprised by how easy getting that kind of access is. So first of all, creating content, if you do it smartly, helps you build a super good senior network of very, very comfortable connections. And it helps you build that network in a way that makes you look really, really good. So you're not just meeting them at a networking event for 5 minutes and then you're off. No, you're sitting down and you're having at least a 20-minute conversation. You're asking them questions about their work. You're reflecting on what they're saying. You're basically being your best self to this person who you really want to impress. So then if that person reads an article that you've written about their work, then actually, do you even really care if anybody else has read it? No, it doesn't matter what your audience is. It matters who your audience are. So 100,000 useless people, 100,000 teenage girls, unless you're selling something to teenage girls, is not going to be as useful to you as maybe 2 investors or whatever your job is, to the CEO of your company. The CEO of your company, that's one important guy, usually a guy, unfortunately, so far. In order to create content that people want to read and that people are impressed by, make sure that it's accessible and it's actionable. So don't create the kind of content that says, oh, these are the 5 trends. These are the 5 trends and this is what you can do about it, because that way you are seen as you are the expert person who knows what's coming and who knows what to do about it. I'm assuming everybody here is in some kind of service industry. So you are creating something in order to help people do their jobs easier, make more money, have more fun, whatever it is. And everything that you're doing is going to have some kind of trends and some kind of things that we should be doing to prepare. So if you are the person who can help people to prepare, you're going to be really, really useful to them. Also, another good thing about creating content, don't worry so much about people not reading it if you are remembering, if you're learning from it, because creating content is basically like writing essays for college. When you're creating content, you're reflecting on what you've been learning. Now, I recommend that you publish on Medium or on LinkedIn rather than just on a personal blog. So Medium or LinkedIn already have large audiences, and it makes they make your content discoverable. They're really good discovery platforms for professional content. But once you publish it, don't just leave it there. Don't just publish it and then think, okay, it goes on this platform and has these algorithms, good things are going to happen. No, you've got to promote it. And not only do you promote it on your social media when you've actually published it, maybe actually send it strategically to people you want to impress. Sort of saying, I know we were discussing XYZ. Here was, and when we met 2 weeks ago, here is a post that I wrote recently. Here are my thoughts. Would you like me to discuss? You know, that's a very soft pitch email. So make sure when you're creating content that it goes somewhere, not just once on your social media and that's it. So when you're also creating content, start small and then expand. So when I first started doing all of this, I was just writing for. First, I was just writing for on LinkedIn and on Medium. Then I started writing on other people's blogs, so on other people's company blogs. You can be a guest contributor for company blogs, for small publications. You can be a contributor to other bloggers. That's a really good way to get your name out there. You're not going to be paid, but you will get practice and you will get known. So this is me. When I gave an interview to a vegan condom website in London. So, you know, from vegan condoms to now the Financial Times. But you got to start somewhere. So just think about where your target audience is, who you want to be read by, who you want to be known by, and then just literally start sending them your articles on Medium as writing samples, and then say, can I write for you? I've already got this blog. This is what I write about. This is what I'm an expert in. I propose to write you an article on XYZ with some key points that your clients could use. A lot of people are going to say yes to that. And then you move further and further and further. So first you start with small companies, with small blogs, with small newsletters, and then you move up and up and up. So the next bit of it is you've got to build your network. So you've done this content creation. So well done. You've developed your expert niche, but you can't just be this guy. And it can be really, really tempting. It can be really tempting to kind of not leave your house. So don't do that. If you have written all of this content, you know, you've reviewed all of these books, obviously you're going to be sitting around by the computer quite a lot. But in order for you to actually build your brand, you've got to get out there and you've got to talk to people. So just remember that building a personal brand, you've got to do the online stuff, but without doing the offline stuff, it's not really going to get you that far. So when you're building your network, you've got to balance the online stuff, the articles, the podcast, the slide shares, with actually going to meet people and hosting events and going to events. So I would say when you are starting to build your network and you're starting to build yourself as an expert in your field, start small, either one-on-ones or small groups. So for example, why not start organizing a monthly or a quarterly event, maybe a small event with people that you know, to discuss XYZ. So in my case, we recently started hosting these events, just literally networking events on for fashion tech people in London. So people who are working on the intersection of fashion, e-commerce, and technology. So technology for retailers, basically. What do? We literally I just get a bar on a Monday night, so there's nobody usually in this bar anyway, people prepay, and then you just get some drinks and snacks. Literally, it takes hardly any organization, but it helps me build my brand amongst this network, and at the end of it, somehow people are really, really, really grateful to me, even though all I've done is organize a meeting in a bar. So when you are building a personal brand, again, start small, start doing dinners, start organizing networking dinners, or organize a dinner maybe for 10 people and then get a guest of honor to speak about something, essentially when you're asking them questions. And then that way, if you're organizing events, the great thing about organizing events is you don't actually have to produce the content. I love organizing events because I get a bunch of people together who know what they're talking about. I ask them questions, and then somehow by default, I look like the expert when really I'm just asking what everybody else wants to know. So start small, host events, and then use your content. So as I was saying, you can build your network by interviewing people that you want to meet. Even if they say no once, maybe they'll say no another time. You know when it's really, really good to reach out to super senior people when they're going to say yes? It's when they've launched something new. If a venture capitalist launches a new fund, ask them to give you an interview on your Medium post. That's when they'll say yes. If an author has written a new book, ask them for an interview. If they're not doing anything, they're probably focusing on other work. But if they've got something to promote, they're more likely to speak to people who are not yet working for the New York Times. So your network and your content are basically all together. So now, remember also to get social proof. Social proof is a really good thing when you're not yet known, so you can use somebody else's brand to grow your own. Since I'm assuming a lot of you are UChicago grads, you can use UChicago alumni stuff, basically like I'm using it now to show to people how smart and brilliant you are. So my name is not that well known. I mean, it's more well known kind of than your average professional, but it's nowhere near Richard Branson's just yet. The University of Chicago, very well known. So by affiliating myself with the University of Chicago Alumni Network, if people don't know me, they think, well, I don't know who she is, but if she's doing stuff for the Chicago Alumni Network, that means she must be smart. She must know what she's talking about. So get involved with something that already has a good brand to show to people, basically to signal to people that you're worth knowing. So that's university affiliations, professional networks, charities. Charities are a really good one. Past achievements are not as useful as a current affiliation. So for example, if you just have an MBA, that is not as useful as an MBA who organizes a quarterly cocktail for Princeton alumni on whatever, I don't know, book writing. Remember that, as I was saying before, a strong brand opens the door, but it's up to you what happens when you walk through it. So be ready for when that call comes. Make sure that you actually know what you want. I think that, I mean, my personal experience is that personal branding for me has been a leveler in an unequal society. What I mean by that is that if you're already a Rockefeller, it doesn't really matter so much how smart you are or what you've done. In a way, kind of, there's a Prince Charles, I think he went to Cambridge, and I don't think he's the smartest person in the world. Anyway, but if you're Prince Charles, you're probably not going to be that, you're probably not going to be turned away. So in an unequal society, you've got to use other measures to essentially get ahead. So having a personal brand opens the door to places that are normally either completely closed or very, very hard to get into. But once you're there, you've got to take the next step yourself. You've got to carry on going after you get in that door. But what's useful about having a good personal brand is that your needs might change. But if you're already in the door and you already have that really good, really exclusive network, the thing you're asking them for today is going to be, it's totally okay to ask for a different thing tomorrow. What I mean is that when I first started working on a personal brand and I started writing articles and organizing events, etc., what I really wanted at the time was that I thought I was going to do really well in a private equity firm. That was my dream. And as you can see, I'm doing something completely different now. Yet, I still have contacts that I built then, people who were impressed by me, people who I met literally by putting them on panels, on events that I was organizing. Some of those people then ended up becoming my investors. Some of those people became my friends. So my needs in my career completely changed, but the network that I was building in my attempts to have a successful private equity career ended up helping me in my retail tech business and in my tech for non-techies training. So if you just start building yourself as a professional and you start opening the doors, don't worry so much about how you're going to be using them in 10 years' time. As long as you know where you're going now, you're going to be fine. But do remember that once you get coverage, even if it is, imagine that you're writing an op-ed for the New York Times. Imagine that happens. Once that's happened, you can't just let that sit there. Once you've got to make sure that people know that that's happened to you. So when you're growing your personal brand, the work kind of never ends. Even if you think even if you're in the top publications, you still need to make sure that people see it. And that also counts for if you're not in the top publications. If you're just writing for Medium, you're writing for LinkedIn, just carry on being strategic, carry on being proactive. So when you publish something, whether it's a podcast, a slide share, an article, whether it's an article on Medium or a big publication, whatever it is, send it out to people. Don't be afraid to send it by email. If it's a good article, you're doing them a favor, so don't be shy. Make it part of your resume. By that I mean your actual resume, but also your LinkedIn profile, because that makes you stand out. I get a lot of resumes that I'm seeing for my company, and when I see that somebody's got something else like a blog or a website or something interesting, that basically just makes them more interesting to me. And also just a really easy hack: just put whatever you're doing in your email signature, and people are going to be immediately drawn to that. So if you guys want to get more, we're going to have some space for questions now, but you can write to me. This is my email address, sophia@ntap, or you can sign up to my mailing list. So in London, I'm mainly based in London, but I'm commuting quite often to New York. So come and say hi in either one of those places. In London, we're going to be starting the Tech for Non-Techies events, and we're going to be doing them more and more online. But right now they're just in London. But on our mailing list, you'll be able to see the events and some tips and various other things. And these are some of the accelerators investors that I have advised. So let's start. Why don't I stop talking and start listening to what you guys have to say? Adam?
Great. Thank you, Sophia. So we have about, I think, 10 minutes to 10 or 15 minutes to get through some questions. One, and I'll offer to link to this book recommendation in the post-event email, but could you mention again, Sophia, that the title of that and the author of the book you recommended?
Oh, one. So Stand Out by Dory Clark.
All right, perfect. And I will link
Also,
to an Amazon listing of that book in our post-event email.
and if you're thirsty for knowledge, honestly, go on her website like right now, sign up to her mailing list, and she's got this personal brand checklist, which is super, super good. Go through her personal brand checklist. Um, it's got, I think, about 50 questions, and it's a kind of personal brand self-evaluation form about where, and it will kind of show you where you're doing things well and where you're not doing things well. If you sign up to her emails, you'll just get this constant emails about things that you kind of know that you should be doing, but it's good to be reminded. Yeah, please
Great,
continue.
thanks.
Sorry.
We have another resource-related question. This one is about Medium. Could you share a little bit about that platform for folks who aren't as familiar, and why it's one of the two that you
Mhm.
recommend using?
So Medium is, I think, so Medium was started by Evan Davis, the guy who started Twitter. And what they focus on is long form content in beautiful design. So actually, if you look at the platform, it's really nice to look at. They limit your functionality in terms of how you can post, which means that the posts are nice fonts, kind of the imagery is put together nicely, which actually really matters. I'm sure we've all gone to people's blogs and that it is just unpleasant to even look at. Anyway, so Medium first began being popular with kind of the Silicon Valley crowd. So it was technology people and investors. And now it's grown to a more business kind of to business publications in general. Like Nassim Taleb, for example, the Black Swan author, he writes quite a lot on Medium as well. Um, for business, it's really good. For consumer, if you want to be known as a consumer leader and you want to say write articles about fashion trends, that's not really for you. So what's really good about Medium is that Medium is very good at promoting articles to people who might be interested in them. So for example, every day I get a Medium digest in my inbox um, from authors that I have not subscribed to. But it's basically based on what I've read before and based on how like what kinds of articles have had positive reactions from me. Medium is then sending me things that it thinks I will like. So it's really good to get your stuff discovered if you want to be discovered by a business audience. They've now got a kind of paid and a free version. So paid to read articles, not to write. So don't worry. But even then, you can read quite a lot for free. I would recommend probably start with getting your articles for publishing your articles so people can read it for free. Because at the end of the day, your aim is to grow your personal brand, and the amount of money you'll be making with a small readership is going to be like $2. So it's not really worth it. But especially finance, technology, investing, and kind of a lot of the coaching stuff, things like personal branding and productivity. Medium is really good for that.
Great, thanks. We have an attendee who asked if you do any kind of A/B testing when you create your content on perhaps different platforms, and what metric would you target to determine success? So are you most interested in views, contact, shares? If you could share any insights.
I mean, I suppose I should do that, but honestly, I don't because I don't have the time. Um, and I think most people don't have the time. So, I create content, and the content that I create is essentially helping me build my businesses. Um, so if I was just a content creator, then I would probably do that. Or if I had a team, like a production team, then that's what they would do. But I don't have the time to do that. I know though that there are services where you can test headlines. So literally you can do A/B testing of headlines. But also remember, I mean, human creativity is a really wonderful thing. So A/B testing is great, but what about just writing something and then writing another article with a slightly different angle? You can actually you can cover the same topic, or you can discuss the same topic in so many different angles and so many different ways. I think trial and error, just literally just putting content out there and seeing what happens is still really, really good. So that's one thing. In terms of metric, it is nice to see lots and lots of views on your articles because it's flattering. That's really lovely. But what is more important is the who, not the how many. So for example, if you publish something on Medium or on LinkedIn, you can see if people liked it, or you can see if people commented. Who's liking it and who's commenting it? Is the people that you want to be known by that, somebody who maybe you want to get a job from, or somebody you want to do a business deal with, liking or commenting on your article, that's going to be more useful than, say, getting read by 1,000 people. If you're getting read by 1,000,000 people, that's different. But before we're going to that territory, it's more about the who. And the who, some of that literally has to be you sending stuff out, putting it on LinkedIn, and not only on LinkedIn on your profile, but putting it in LinkedIn groups. So for example, we've got there's a Chicago booth alumni LinkedIn group. Put stuff in there if you think it's going to be useful to people, or join LinkedIn groups and Facebook groups that are relevant to your profession and share stuff in there, and then see who's picking it up, because relevant people reading what you're doing and knowing about you is better than lots of irrelevant people. Any
Great,
more?
thanks. Yeah, we have another attendee question around organizing events. So this
Mm-hmm.
attendee said that she organizes events, and afterwards people will thank her because they expanded their network. However, those people don't seem to give her extra brownie points or goodwill, though they're happy to use her to attend their
Oh
next event
yeah.
or to network.
Oh no,
Any
sorry. I know. God, there's so much selfishness out there. I feel you. It's it's really surprising. It's really surprising when you just give and you give and you give, and then people are just happy to take and give nothing in return. So first of all, that is an unfortunate fact of life. Uh, that's point one. Point two is that not everybody's like that. So there will be people who will want to do things in return. So that's point two. Point three is I now don't organize events where I have to pay a lot. So for example, I'll either host a party at my home, which for me is not going to be expensive. I'm not going to get Beyonce to come and sing. Um, or if I'm doing a networking event and it's at a bar, I will put up tickets on Eventbrite, and people will pay 20 £25 or $25 to turn up. So basically none of it is coming out of my pocket, because I've done things like that before, where essentially I'm you know giving lots and lots to people, and no, and people are not giving back. So there is you've got to protect yourself. Also, after an event, follow up with an email to everybody saying thank you, and these are the things that I'm doing, or essentially ask for things and follow up. I think sometimes we can feel awkward asking, but don't feel awkward asking. There's a book called The Art of Asking, which apparently is good, but I haven't read it yet. But I've been recommended it when I was discussing this very problem with somebody else. So if you're creating an environment where people are coming together and you think that they could be useful to you, ask them about what they're working on, tell them what you're working on, and then literally say, what do you think? Let's discuss how we could collaborate. Um, since I've started forcing myself to do that, things have started happening. But you do have to force yourself to do it. So I guess my main points are there are lots and lots of people who are just selfish. So that's just that's just rubbish, but that's true. Secondly, there are people who are not selfish, but they are so that they're not going to know that you need something, or they're not going to know that you can offer something. So you've got to tell them, you've got to propose something, you've got to have an idea, um, and also protect the downside. Charge them for the drinks. Don't pay for it yourself. Um, and remember also to do follow-ups. So if you're doing an event, just do an email follow-up and then just mention. I'm working on this and I am looking for partners or introductions to XYZ, and see what happens. But you gotta ask.
Great, thanks. I think we have time for maybe one more question, and we've had a couple kind of getting at if you have a brand or a passion that is different from your day job, how do you sort of navigate that? And is there any concern that the company where you have your day job might have, yeah, I don't know, might not like that you have these interests in other areas, or maybe there's something to address whether you need a disclaimer if there might be some confusion whether you're representing your employer. But how do you kind of navigate the difference between your day job and what you're doing to personally brand yourself?
Well, I mean, I can't speak for different companies because I don't know, but it seems that the world is moving in a way where we are, as people, now being more and more encouraged to have personalities in the corporate world. I mean, doesn't the CEO of Goldman Sachs also have a DJing career? And I think, yeah, I think he does. So, if the CEO of Goldman Sachs is going around DJing in New York nightclubs, then I think you can probably get away with pretty much anything. Um, so, I'll give an example of a colleague that I used to have a long time ago. So, I was at the time working in financial PR in London. And so our job was mainly to be talking to the Financial Times and the Wall Street Journal about company performance. And I had a colleague who really loved theatre. I mean, that was just a huge passion for her. And she actually used her passion in theatre to really propel her career forward. So she had contacts in various production companies around London, literally just because she loved it. She knew about all the new openings. She knew even some of the directors and some of the actors. I think some of them probably through just sheer stalking. Anyway, so that just meant that she then ended up creating a partnership between our company and one of the main theatres in London. She ended up spearheading that. Clients absolutely loved it because most of the time when you're meeting a client, you're either dealing with a problem or you're asking them for more money. So not particularly happy meetings. But this time we were taking clients to exclusive theatre openings, introducing them to actors, and then my colleague was essentially kind of giving them something completely new. So maybe theatre is easier, but rock climbing, wine tasting, whatever it is, in general, whoever you're working with, they're also people and they also have interest. And lots of people want to learn. So if you're doing something and it sounds kind of interesting and you can get them involved, it's going to make you a more interesting person. And if they don't like it, if they feel threatened by that, then I think they will probably sound like a rather old style kind of company, because the trend now is more and more that employers want employees who have something else to them as opposed to just sitting in front of a laptop. Any more questions? Do we have time?
I think we're at our time limit. So thank you so much, Sophia, for sharing your insight on this important career topic. At this point, we've officially concluded week 1 of Career Month, but we will be back next week with a webinar on Tuesday, November 12th at 12 p.m. Central, and that's on how to build your career plan. So if you are ready to take specific actionable steps to move forward in your career, you'll want to join us for that program as well. You can visit our events page at careers.uchicagoalumni.org for a list of our most upcoming programs. Take care, everyone, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Sophia.
Thank you. Bye, guys.